I spent 30 years of my life being told that silence was a virtue. I was taught that a daughter's only job was to protect her father's reputation, no matter the cost. But last night at 2:00 a.m. in a hidden hospital room in Nebraska, that silence was finally broken. My sister Jana just did the unthinkable. She banned my father from the birth of her first child, while Jim Bob was frantically trying to scrub the evidence of a $20 million financial fraud back in Arkansas. My mom, Michelle, was making a life-changing choice. She didn't stay to help him fight the IRS. She fled across state lines to protect Jana. For the first time in history, the Duggar family is officially divided, and there is no going back. Tonight, I'm putting everything on the line. I'm breaking every NDA I ever signed to tell you about the secret burner phones, the midnight escape through the woods, and the 20 million discovery that destroyed my mother's trust. This isn't a reality show episode. This is the truth about the night that the Duggar empire fell. I'm Jill Duggar Dillard. I've seen the documents they tried to burn. Stay with me for the next 60 minutes because I'm taking you through every single chapter of the escape. The gate is open, the truth is out, and the world is finally going to know the real story. It all started on a Tuesday night in early January 2026. The Tonatown house, what we always called Big House, felt unusually cold. My mom, Michelle, had been feeling a strange sense of unease for months. It wasn't just the public scandals or the pressure of the cameras. It was something deeper. That night, while my dad was away at a political meeting, Mom found herself in the one room she was always told to stay out of, the private office behind the library. She wasn't looking for a fight. She was looking for a misplaced birth certificate. But as she pulled open a heavy mahogany drawer that was usually locked, she found a leather-bound folder labeled Global Ministry Protection. As she flipped through the pages, and what her hands began to shake, she wasn't looking at ministry work. She was looking at a maze of offshore accounts, shell companies, and real estate transfers. She saw names like Faithful Holdings and Cayman Trust. The total at the bottom of the audit sheet was staggering $20 million. For decades, we were told to live debt-free. We were told to shop at thrift stores to save the difference. Mm-hmm. But while the kids were sharing clothes and living on rice and beans in the early days, millions were being funneled away. The most heartbreaking part for her, she saw my name. She saw Jana's name. She saw Jinger's name. Our signatures were on documents we had never even seen. When my dad returned that night, he found her holding the folder. He didn't offer an explanation. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He used his authority voice, the one that usually silenced everyone in the room. He told her she was stepping out of her umbrella of protection and that her curiosity was a sin of pride. But for the first time in 40 years, that voice didn't work. Mom didn't look down at her shoes. She looked him in the eyes and realized she wasn't his partner, she was his asset. That was the moment the big house became a prison. She knew she couldn't stay. She waited until he went to sleep, took her old burner phone from a hidden spot in the laundry room, and called the one person she knew would answer, Jana. It was 1:15 a.m. on that Tuesday night. I was asleep in my bed when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I usually keep it on silent, but for some reason, that night I didn't. When I saw it was an unknown number, I almost didn't answer. But a gut feeling told me I had to. When I picked up, I didn't hear a hello. I just heard heavy, shaky breathing. Then I heard my mom's voice, but it wasn't the voice the world knows. It wasn't the calm, high-pitched, keep sweet voice from the show. It was a woman who was terrified, but she whispered, Jill, I found it. I found the money. I found the names. She told me she was calling from a burner phone she kept hidden in the back of a linen closet for months, just in case. She told me about the 20 million audit, the forged signatures, and how my dad had reacted when she confronted him. She said, Jill, he didn't even deny it. He just told me to be quiet and submit, but I can't look at our children the same way knowing he took their future. My heart was racing. I knew that if Dad caught her on that phone, he would take it away and lock the doors. We didn't have much time. I told her, Mom, you need to get out. You need to go to Jana. Jana was already in Nebraska living with Stephen Wissmann and his family. She had finally found a place of peace away from the Arkansas compound. We knew the Wissmanns were the only people strong enough to stand up to my dad's influence. On that call, we made a plan. It was like a military operation. We decided she wouldn't leave through the front gate. The security cameras there were linked directly to Dad's iPad. She had to wait until 300 a.m. when the patrol was at the other end of the property. She would walk through the woods to the old utility road where a car would be waiting. Mom asked me, do you think God will forgive me for leaving? It broke my heart. I told her, Mom, God wants you to be safe. He doesn't want you to be a silent partner in a lie. That was the moment she stopped crying. She said, okay, I'm packing a bag. I'm not taking anything he bought me. Just my Bible and my photos. As we hung up, I realized our family would never be the same. The big house was about to become an empty shell, and the woman who held it together for 40 years was finally choosing herself. The clock finally hit 300 a.m. In the Tontatown house, silence can be a very heavy thing. My mom knew that every second counted. She didn't use the front door. The heavy wood would groan, and the security sensors would alert my dad's phone instantly. Instead, she slipped out through the guest wing, a part of the house that stayed mostly empty after the older kids moved out. She was only carrying one small bag. She told me later that she felt like a thief in her own home. But she wasn't stealing anything. She was just taking back her life. To avoid the gravel driveway, which is loud and monitored by high-definition cameras, she had to cut through the thick woods at the edge of the property. It was freezing. The Arkansas's winter air felt like needles on her skin. She didn't have a flashlight because the light would be spotted from the second floor windows. She walked by memory, tripping over roots and brambles that tore at her coat. Every time a twig snapped or an owl hooted, she froze, thinking it was my dad's security team or his dogs coming after her. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She kept thinking about that ledger, the $20 million and the forged names. That anger was the only thing keeping her moving through the cold. She realized that the umbrella of protection my dad always talked about was actually a cage, and these woods were the only way out. When she finally reached the old utility road, about a mile from the house, she saw a pair of headlights blink twice. It was the signal. James and Jason were waiting in a car that wasn't recognizable, a dark SUV borrowed from a friend. Yes, even some of the boys couldn't stay silent anymore. They didn't say a word as she climbed into the back seat. They just handed her a warm blanket and a bottle of water. As the car pulled away and the lights of the Tontatown compound faded in the rearview mirror, my mom did something she hadn't done in 40 years. She took off her glasses, leaned her head against the window, and let out a sob that sounded like a lifetime of held in pain. She was out. She was across the first border, but the journey to Nebraska and the fight for her freedom had only just begun when my mom sat at that desk in the middle of the night. She wasn't just looking at numbers. She was looking at the truth of how our entire lives had been monetized without our consent. The audit she found wasn't a standard tax return. It was a 50-page deep dive into the Duggar empire that my dad had been hiding even from her. The most shocking discovery was the amount, $20 million. For years, we were told the show barely covered the bills for 19 children. We were told to be grateful for the platform God had given us. But according to these papers, millions from TLC and our book deals were being funneled into a network of shell companies. Mom saw names of companies she had never heard of: Faithful, Legacy, LLC, LC, Tontatown Strategic Partners, and even accounts based in the Cayman Islands. But the part that made her blood run cold was the signatures. She saw my name, Jana's name, and even the names of the younger siblings on contracts authorizing my dad to manage all our earnings on perpetuity. Those signatures didn't look right. Some were clearly forged, and others were signed by us as teenagers when we were told we were just signing autograph permissions for fans. The audit revealed that while I was struggling to pay for the birth of my son, Israel, and even had to go to court just to get a tiny fraction of what I was owed, there was a secret rainy day fund of $5 million that was used exclusively for my brother Josh's legal defense and his private lifestyle. My father had spent more on protecting a predator than he had on the healthcare or education of his own daughters. When Mom saw the total, $20 million, she realized that our family wasn't a ministry. It was a corporation where my dad was the CEO and the rest of us were just unpaid employees. She saw the receipts for private jets and luxury properties that were hidden under business names. She told me later, "Jill, I felt like I had been living a lie for 40 years. I thought we were building a kingdom for God, but we were just building a bank account for one man." That audit was the final piece of the puzzle. It was the proof she needed that the man she called Pops wasn't who he claimed to be. The money was a symbol of the control he had over all of us. And that night, Mom decided that $20 million wasn't worth the soul of her family. As the sun began to rise over the flat, open fields of Nebraska, the world felt different. For the first time in 40 years, my mom wasn't waking up in the big house. She wasn't waking up to a schedule managed by a production team or the heavy expectations of my father. She was 600 miles away, standing in the kitchen of a small 275 Vive Zellos and Fixer Upper in Lincoln that Jana and Steven had spent months turning into a home. Jana was there to meet her at the door. There were no cameras, no crew, just a quiet, tearful embrace between a mother and her eldest daughter. Jana, who was now heavily pregnant and glowing, led Mom to a guest room they had specially prepared. It wasn't gold, leafed, or grand like the master suite in Town. It was simple, painted in soft beige tones, with a single window looking out over the garden. Mom told me later that she sat on the edge of that bed and just breathed. She realized that in Nebraska, she wasn't Michelle Duggar, the reality star. She was just Mom. Jana had made her a cup of tea. They sat in the newly renovated kitchen, the one with the white marble and gold finishes that Jana had shared on her YouTube channel. But that morning, the kitchen wasn't for filming. It was for healing. The Wissmann family, Steven's parents and siblings, welcomed her with open arms and, more importantly, with total privacy. They didn't ask about the 20 million audit or the IRS rumors. They just gave her a place to be still. For the first few days, Mom didn't even want to check her phone. She knew Dad would be calling, sending lawyers, or trying to guilt trip her back to Arkansas. But in this Nebraska sanctuary, his voice couldn't reach her. She spent her afternoons helping Jana fold baby clothes, tiny blue onesies. As Jana had recently hinted they were expecting a boy. As they folded the laundry, Mom realized that Jana had achieved what she never could, a marriage based on partnership and a home built on truth. Jana's home was a fixer-upper in more ways than one. While they were fixing the walls and the floors, they were also fixing the broken legacy of our family. Mom looked at Jana's growing bump and made a silent vow. This baby would never know the fear of the big house. This child would grow up in the light. Nebraska wasn't just a different state, it was a different world. And for the first time, Michelle Duggar felt like she finally belonged to herself. Back in Arkansas, the silence of the big house didn't last long. When my dad woke up on Wednesday morning and found my mom's side of the bed empty, he didn't call her with worry. He called his legal team. He knew exactly why she had left. He knew about the 20 million audit she had seen, and he knew that for the first time in 40 years, he had lost his grip on the woman who made the Duggar brand possible. The retaliation was swift and calculated. First, he cut off her access to all shared bank accounts. He wanted to make sure that if she was in Nebraska, she would be humbled by a lack of resources. But what he didn't realize was that the sisters, had already prepared for this. We had set up a private fund months ago, just in case any of us needed a way out. Then came the messages. He didn't just message Mom. He messaged all of us. He sent long, rambling emails filled with distorted Bible verses about rebellion being as the sin of witchcraft. He threatened to remove Mom from the family trust and even suggested he would file for a legal separation to protect the family's assets from what he called our mental instability. This last ability was the classic ability, was the classic ability. If you can't control her, try to make everyone believe she's lost her mind. But the most hurtful part was when he turned his sights on Jana and Stephen in Nebraska. He sent a formal cease and desist letter to Stephen Wissmann, claiming that Jana was harboring a fugitive and interfering with a divine marriage covenant. He even threatened to sue Jana for the money he claimed he invested in her house and her YouTube business over the years. He was trying to turn Jana's sanctuary into a legal battlefield. I remember talking to Jana that night. She was calm, but I could hear the steel in her voice. Mm-hmm. She said, "Jill, he can take the money. He can take the name. But he can't take our peace." We realized then that Dad's greatest fear wasn't losing Mom. It was losing the image of the perfect family that brought in the millions. He wasn't acting like a heartbroken husband. He was acting like a CEO trying to stop a whistleblower. The big house was now a war room, but across the border in Nebraska, the walls were thick. The family was united, and for the first time, Jim Bob Duggar's threats were falling on deaf ears. While my dad was busy sending legal threats to Nebraska, the real world was finally catching up to the Tontatown compound. It was a Thursday morning, just 2 days after my mom left, at 8:15 a.m., the front gate, the one that usually only opens for family or film crews, was met by 3 black SUVs. They were exposed. They weren't there for an interview. They were from the Internal Revenue Service, and they had a federal warrant. My brother James, who was still at the property, called me in a panic. He said, "Jill, there are people in suits everywhere. And what happened at carrying boxes out of Dad's office, this wasn't just a routine check. The 20 million audit my mom had found was just the tip of the iceberg. It turned out that a whistleblower, someone deep inside the family's financial circle, had already handed over years of records to the authorities months ago. His records being exposed was they weren't just looking at tax returns. They were looking at the global ministry protection accounts. They were looking at how millions of dollars meant for charity and missionary work had actually been spent on private legal fees, high-end real estate, and Josh's defense. The IRS doesn't care about umbrellas of protection or family loyalty. They care about the law. And for the first time, my dad couldn't charm or pray his way out of the situation. I heard from a source that when the agents walked into Dad's private library, he tried to tell them they were persecuting a man of God, but the lead agent just looked at him and said, sir, we are investigating a person of interest in a multi-million-dollar fraud case. Please step away from the computer. They seized everything. Hard drives, servers being exposed, filing cabinets, even the burner phones that were used to coordinate offshore transfers. As they loaded the boxes into the vans, the neighbors in Tontatown were watching from their fences. The Duggar name, which for decades stood for faith and family, was now being branded with tax evasion and corruption. And Dad called his high-priced lawyers. But even they couldn't stop a federal raid. The most ironic part, the very money he had hoarded to keep his power was now the reason his power was being stripped away. As the news started to break on the local stations, Mom sat in the living room in Nebraska and watched it in silence. She didn't feel happy about it. She just felt a profound sense of relief that and her daughters were finally on the right side of the truth. The IRS raid in Arkansas didn't stop my dad. And what happened in my life being him desperate, he knew if he could get Mom back, he could claim a united family front. So he drove 600 miles to Nebraska. He didn't call. He just showed up at Jana's door. Jana saw him from the window and felt that old fear, but Stephen Wissmann stood at the door like a wall. He told Dad, "You aren't coming in." Finally, Mom walked out. She didn't look down. She told him, "Jim Bob, I'm not a child you can discipline. I am a woman you betrayed." For the first time, his Bible verses couldn't silence her. He left empty-handed, shouting threats into the Nebraska wind. 20 million fallout, IRS raid. Back in Tontatown, the forensic team found the smoking gun. It wasn't just tax evasion. It was the global ministry protection accounts. They found proof that the money meant for missions was actually being used to buy silence from victims of the family's past scandals. The 20 million wasn't just sitting there. It was blood money used to keep the Duggar brand alive. Jim Bob's face, once the symbol of faith, was now the face of a federal investigation. The secret burner phone records, but the biggest blow came from the burner phones. The feds recovered deleted messages from my dad's secondary line. They revealed he was planning to move the remaining fires and $1 million to an offshore account in the Caymans just days after Mom left. He was preparing to vanish or hide the assets before the kids could claim what was rightfully theirs. He was playing chess with our lives, but Mom had already checked his king. Jana's hospital scare and Michelle's strength. In the middle of this legal war, Jana had a health scare. She was rushed to the hospital in Lincoln. My mom was right there, holding her hand. No cameras, no producers. When my dad's lawyers called the hospital to demand information, Mom told the nurses it is not on the authorized list. This was the moment Michelle truly broke free. She wasn't just escaping from Jim Bob. She was building a fortress for her children. The $20 million settlement offer by late January. Dad tried one last trick. He sent a secret settlement offer, a $5 million and a quiet house in a different state if Mom would sign a non-disclosure agreement in DA in return for a reconciliation video. He wanted to buy her silence. But Mom tore the paper. She told her lawyers, I don't want his money, want my children to have the truth. She realized that an NDA was just another set of golden handcuffs. The siblings pick sides. The family is now officially split. On Dad's side, only a few of the younger ones remain bound by financial ties. But on our side, the circle of protection, there's me, Jinger, Joy-Anna, and the Wissmanns. Even some of my brothers who stayed silent for years are now visiting Nebraska in secret. The Duggar empire hasn't just lost its matriarch, it has lost its foundation. The 19 kids are finally becoming 19 adults. The 2026 Nebraska birth. And then the miracle happened. In the last week of January 20 to 26, Jana gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. As Mom held her new grandson in that quiet Nebraska hospital, she wept. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of rebirth. She whispered to him, "You will never have to hide who you are." It was the final seal on her journey. She wasn't a reality star anymore. She was a grandmother, a mother, and finally, a free woman. So here we are. The big house in Tontatown is quiet, under investigation, and haunted by the ghost of a brand that failed. Michelle is starting over at 60. She's proof that it's never too late to choose yourself. To my dad, the cameras are off, the money is frozen, and the throne is empty. And to you guys, thank you for standing with the truth. This isn't the end of the Duggars. It's the beginning of our healing. I'm Jill Duggar Dillard, and the truth has finally set us all free.